A poor North Korean boy ran away from home not once, but 4 times, and while everyone dismissed him as just stubborn, he would go on to build one of the world's largest car manufacturers. Venturing into the construction industry at a young age was a billion-dollar move, as it gave him an advantage during the rebuild of post-war Korea. He etched his legacy during South Korea's rise from being one of the world's poorest nations to now one of the richest. This is the story of how an ambitious 16-year-old ran away from home to build the largest car manufacturer in the world with Hyundai. Chung Ju-Yung was born in 1915 in the small rural village of Asan in Gangwon Province, located today in North Korea. Born into a poor peasant family and being the eldest of 7 children, Chung was saddled with heavy responsibility at a very young age. Tending to cows on the family farm to make ends meet, Chung initially dreamed of becoming a school teacher. But that dream was cut short as his poor background and the restrictive North Korean environment prevented him from receiving any proper education. But even at a young age, Chung proved he was resilient by attending a local Confucian school at whatever time he could get away from the family farm. Selling wood in big towns, the bubbling business atmosphere of these towns intrigued him, and he hatched a plan to leave his impoverished village to be a part of it. At just 16 years old, Chung and a close friend walked 15 miles from Asan village to the North Korean town of Kogen, where they found work as construction workers. Although he was earning so little, he loved being independent and making his own money. But the escape only lasted 2 months, as Chung's father found them and took them back to the village. After getting a taste of freedom and independence, Chung made another attempt to escape his poor life in the village, but didn't get too far before he was caught by his father and brought back home. It was another year before Chung tried escaping his village, only this time he bought a train ticket for 71 after selling one of his father's prized cattle. After arriving in the city of Keijo, now present-day Seoul, Chung took up bookkeeping classes and did so successfully for a few months. But almost like he implanted a GPS device in his son, Chung's father located him and after a heated argument dragged him back to Asan village. But upon turning 18, Chung made a final escape for Keijo City, where he wasted no time in finding a job and was able to work multiple jobs successfully. He was able to find work again in construction but soon moved on to work as a handyman at a local starch syrup factory in the city. He remained at the factory for a year before moving on to work as a delivery man for a rice store in the city. Working as a delivery man, Chung was able to prove his versatility on the job and was admired by the customers and even the shop owner himself. So much so that the owner of the rice store allowed him to manage the store's accounting in a full-time role. He worked at the store for almost 4 years before a tragedy that would turn out to be a blessing in disguise. The owner of the rice store was old and became terminally ill, and with no living relatives, he decided to hand his store over to Chung before he died. So at the young age of 22, Chung became the owner of his very own rice store, and using his skills and experience was able to grow the business exponentially. That was until World War II happened. In 1939, in its efforts to secure rice supplies for its military during the war, Japan compelled small rice businesses to give up their products, which put people like Chung out of business. After a year with no job or business, Chung decided to try his hand at running a business again, and in 1940 he did just that. With the Japanese colonial government placing restrictions on Koreans in certain industries, he decided to venture into automobile repair. Starting with a 3,000 won loan and a garage space he bought from a friend, Chung started his own Ado service garage. In under 3 years, he was able to grow his business to over 70 employees, and he managed to service a few government vehicles as well. Unfortunately, his achievement was short-lived as misfortune struck again when his business alongside countless others were shut down by the Japanese as part of their war efforts. But this time, Chung got out with over 50,000 yen in savings, which would later serve as seed money for a pivotal business idea. After Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule in 1946, Chung hatched a plan to take part in the rebuilding efforts of the new Korea. He started his business called Hyundai Engineering and Construction Company to help facilitate the industrialization efforts in Korea, and it was by far the best decision he made. Being one of the few established companies at the time and owning his experience in construction and business management, Chung was able to win multiple government contracts with Hyundai. He was in charge of major transportation projects including the construction of the Soyang Dam, the Kori nuclear power plant, and many others. He was also responsible for the construction of the Gyeongbu Expressway, which remains the most important expressway in the country, connecting most major South Korean cities, including Seoul, Busan, Daejeon, Suwon, and others. Being so heavily involved with the Korean Ministry of Transportation, Chung was able to land several contracts from the United Nations as well as U.S. forces, both of which were heavily present in post-war South Korea. Hyundai Construction built multiple U.S. bases and facilities in the country. Having completed several transportation projects and managing to land contracts from the US, Chung decided it was time to branch out his company and put his experience in automobiles to the test. So, in 1968, Hyundai Motors officially took off with the launch of the very first car, the Cortina. The Cortina was a product of Hyundai's collaboration with Ford Motors, and the release of the car marked numerous milestones for both Hyundai and South Korea as well. The car was manufactured at Ulsan, the world's largest shipyard, built by Chung Ju-Yung, and with an annual production capacity of 1.6 million units, remains the world's largest integrated automobile manufacturing facility. With the successful completion of the Cortina, Chung decided to push the envelope to build higher quality vehicles, and in order to do it in-house, he brought in several British engineers and automotive executives. And in 1976, Hyundai designed and manufactured the Pony, breaking ground as the first mass-produced car in South Korea. With the success of the Pony in South Korea, Hyundai began exporting its prized vehicle to other countries in South America, Europe, and North America. And while Hyundai was yet to break into the US market due to emission standards and regulations, the Pony became the highest-selling car in Canada. Moving into the 1980s, Hyundai was establishing itself as a major contender in the automobile industry. And after breaking into the US market in 1986, there was really no doubt. The US market was introduced with the XL model of the Pony, which featured a front-wheel drive and lower emissions. At this point, Chung had established his company as one of South Korea's major conglomerates, raking millions in annual revenue from global sales. Chung Ju-Yung not only played a huge part in the modernization of South Korea after the war, but also made huge strides in resolving the country's relations with North Korea. In 1998, he became the first civilian to cross the Korean demilitarized zone to North Korea, along with 1,001 cows, which he stated was repayment 1,000 times over for the cow he sold to buy the train ticket, with which he escaped his father's farm. Sadly, Chung Ju-Yung passed away in 2001, leaving control of his companies to his sons, but his legacy lives on. Entering the 2010s, Hyundai was turning much of its focus to zero-carbon and environmentally friendly vehicles. Hybrid electric cars launched included the Sonata Hybrid, the Santa Fe Hybrid, and the Avante. The company made history in 2016 with the launch of the ioniq, the world's first car with 3 distinct electrified powertrains: a hybrid, a plug-in, and a fully electric model. The new hybrid SUVs proved highly successful, with the Hyundai Creta being the best-selling SUV in Russia in 2016 and doing just as well in India in 2020. Today, Hyundai Motors employs over 270,000 employees, with multiple subsidiary companies including Kia, Genesis Motors, and ioniq. The company maintains over $100 billion in annual revenue and remains the largest car manufacturer in South Korea. The company remains one of the few car manufacturers that makes every car component in-house. An embodiment of sheer resilience, Chung Ju-Yung was never one to quit, and because he didn't, an entire country rose from the ashes of war. A poor, some might say stubborn farm boy built a global company from nothing, and today his legacy lives on in every Hyundai car that takes to the streets.